Madam Chair, we are now live.
Thank you, Alec. Good afternoon, everyone. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, this meeting of the General Government is being held electronically and live streamed on the town's website. All members of council and town staff in attendance are participating by audio and video teleconference. For members of the public watching from home, please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties throughout the meeting. And I will now call this meeting to order. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be your chair this afternoon for the September 14th, 2020 meeting of the GGC. I'd like to take a quick second to welcome our newest member of the Town of Ajax Dream Team, or welcome back, I should say, the new Director of Finance, Diane Valentin. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And I'd also like to take a minute for someone who is attending their last meeting of the GGC for the Town of Ajax, and that is Tracy Vaughn, our Director of Recreation, Culture, and Community Development. Tracy, thank you very much for all your hard work over the years, and we are going to miss you.
Thank you very much.
So may I ask now, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? By show of hands, please. I guess none, right? None, okay. And the adoption of the minutes, please. The regular minutes of June 8th, 2020. Did I have a mover of those? Any questions?
Councillor Lee to move or second.
Regional Councillor Crawford has moved that. All in favor? Any opposed? None? Okay, and moving to the closed session minutes of the same date, June 28th, 2020. Any questions or comments? And may I have a mover for those minutes? I see Councillor Tyler Moran. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, that motion carries. So I would like at this time, if everyone's okay with it, we will move, before we hit the agenda, we'll move item 6.1 up. And that is the 2019 financial statements and audit report by Steve Stewart, the associate partner at Deloitte. Everyone's okay with that? And I'll say welcome and good afternoon to Mr. Stewart. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I will do what I try to do every year, is be brief, which is generally met with a lot of concurrence. So I'll just report that we Deloitte conducted our audit on the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2019, in accordance with Canadian auditing standards. These standards remain unchanged from the prior year. The town's financial statements are prepared in accordance with public sector accounting standards, which are the same standards that are used by all levels of government in Canada. There were no changes to those standards that applied to the town in 2019. This is a reminder for some, perhaps new for others, but the public sector accounting standards materially differ in some respects from what I refer to as traditional municipal accounting. And that traditional accounting is what is used for budgeting purposes, as well as for internal reporting purposes. These differences primarily relate to the accounting treatment of tangible capital assets, post-employment liabilities, and landfill costs. In the financial statements, note 14, which is actually page 89, I believe, of your package, there's a fairly good summary of what those major impacts are on your budget. So that's a good spot to look at in terms of identifying what those differences are. It's the same, as I say, for all levels of government in Canada. Our audit process generally involves an interim audit where we do our planning and our control work. We did complete that portion of our audit this year in December, so pre-COVID-19. What I wanted to highlight for you this year is that our year-end audit, which is frankly when we do the most of our work, was scheduled to be conducted in May. It started May 25th, I believe, and ended in mid-June, I'll say, field work. But as a result of the COVID-19 precautions that were in place, we did have to complete our audit remotely. We certainly have the technology that allows us to do that. But what it does do in doing audits remotely, it does put a lot of, I'll use the word strain on our clients who have to upload all the information and audit evidence that we would normally walk into an office or look in a drawer or open a book or something like that. They have to upload that to our secure websites. And so I wanted to thank Sandy and her entire team for working diligently this year. One thing I have said on numerous calls similar to this over the audit season for me is that what we have found is that clients who have traditionally been very well prepared for our audits managed to get through the COVID problems in remote auditing very well. And I know Sandy and others on the call have heard me say this before, and it is true. Ajax has always been one of the better clients I have in terms of preparation. So we were able to get through it pretty much on time. And so I wanted to again thank everybody at the town who made that a possibility. We have completed our audit of the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2019. We have issued an unmodified audit opinion on those financial statements dated September the 8th, 2020. Complete set of those statements are in your package. There were no unadjusted errors that we identified during the audit, nor were there any disclosure deficiencies. We're comfortable that the financial statements present fairly the results for the year and the financial position as at December 31st, 2019, and the disclosures in the financial statements are appropriate. I'm not going to go into the financial statements other than to say they are relatively consistent with the prior year. I would point out note 6, which starts on page 79 if you're following along in your package. That's the note on the investment in Alexicon. That is an extensive note in a normal year. This year it got a little extended due to the merger of Whitby Hydro and Viridian, and then the ultimate creation of Alexicon. That had some impact on your financial statements this year. So that note is a little bit more detailed than it would otherwise have been. And the other thing I wanted to draw your attention for, in keeping with my COVID-19 theme, is note number 19, which is on page 96 of your package. It's called subsequent event, and that's just a note that the town decided, and we, by the way, recommended it, so we're all on the same page. A note to identify to the readers of the financial statement that the COVID pandemic officially hit after the end of the fiscal year. It has obviously impacted on your organization. The extent to which that impact will have in 2020 and potentially beyond is still yet to be determined. And so it's a relatively generic note that just draws that to the attention of the reader. It's consistent with the disclosure that I've seen in most municipal financial statements that I've seen. So overall, the audit went well, all things considered. Our audit is complete. The financial statements are done and good to go. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Are there any questions? I see Regional Councillor Lee. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, it's Mr. Stewart. The municipal debt repaid, so it says financing activities, and it was 4.9 million. Last year, it was negative 3.2 million. Can you explain to me what municipal debt repaid is and why there be such a grand fluctuation between the year-over-year numbers?
Could you please say the page?
Sorry, page 8 of 30.
Thank you.
Like, what is municipal debt and why do they, like, because I thought we couldn't run deficits. So what would a debt example be, and why would the delta be so high between 2018 and 2019?
Yeah, so I can't find page 8 of 13 in mine. So what were the numbers again?
It was, okay, so it says financing activities, municipal debt repaid 2019, $4,982,964.
Yeah, okay.
2018, 3.2 million.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you. I'm on side now. So what you're looking at is the cash flow statement. And the cash flow statement is designed to say this was our cash position at the beginning of the year, and at the bottom is our cash position at the end of the year. And here's the various things that occurred during the year to impact on that cash position. Financing activities is when the municipality needs financing for capital projects, or typically it's capital projects, you issue debenture debt, and from time to time you can borrow internally as well. What you're looking at, the negative number in 2018 represents the fact that during 2018 you actually used cash, $3.2 million to pay down debt. So you lowered your debenture debt position, and the 4.9 million in the current year represents the fact that net you actually incurred additional debt. You got $4.9 million of cash through the issuance of debt to fund presumably capital operation.
So through the chair to staff, then would that 4.9 million be used? For example, was that Audley Phase 2? Why was there such a withdrawal from our own accounts to pay for? Where did this money go to? I guess is my question.
Through the chair to Councillor Lee. So two things happened in 2019. We had the fire debenture that was external. We reissued it as an internal debt, and we also issued debt for Audley Recreation Center Phase 2, both internal and external. So that would explain the variances.
Okay, that is helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm good.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Maybe I'll just ask a similar question to Regional Councillor Lee. It is it's page 5 of 30, and it's the non-financial assets construction in progress line. So in 2018, that figure was 33,889,954. And in 2019, it was 5,451,791. So maybe just also an explanation of why such a huge difference.
Madam Chair, is it possible to have that on the screen?
Oh, good question. Alec, can we do that?
Yes, if you'll bear with me.
Thank you.
So I'll start to answer that question, then I'll let Sandy take the credit for the precise answer. But essentially what that is construction in process would be a capital project that is being constructed. So it's work in process or construction in process until such time as that's complete. And then at that point, it becomes a tangible capital asset. So I believe you had at least one very substantial project underway in 2018. And in 2019, that project was actually completed and went into service. And so most of that $33 million has moved from 2018 construction in process to the $583 million you see in tangible capital assets in 2019. And this year, the work in process or construction in process, sorry, is much lower. It's $5.4 million. And I bet you Sandy can tell you exactly what projects were in process in 2018.
Thanks, Steve. Through the chair to Councillor Bauer. That was actually the Audley Recreation Center.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That would have been my question.
I knew that too.
Thanks very much. Are there any other questions? I see no hands. Thank you very much, Mr. Stewart, for your time and the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Do we need to move this item out? Or should I say Sarah? Or it's fine to move forward?
Madam Chair, you could receive the report for information.
Okay. Could I please have a mover to receive this report? I see the hand of Councillor Tyler Morin. All in favor? Any opposed? I see none. That's carried. Thank you. Okay, let's move to section 4, the consent agendas items. So today, the following items have been pulled to discuss: 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and 4.6. So that leaves only 4.5. Let's have a mover to receive that. I see Regional Councillor Lee. All in favor? Okay, so that's moved. And now we will start discussions with 4.1, which is the 2021 meeting schedule and committee chair and vice chair appointments. And that was pulled by Councillor Tyler Morin. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm good. It was just a small definition I needed, and I looked it up. I know what an officer is now.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Any questions at all? Okay, so let's receive that 4.1. May I have a mover, please? I see Councillor Khan. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that's carried. 4.2. Revisions to the Chief Administrative Officer bylaw, and that was pulled first by Regional Councillor Crawford. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It says that this is a revision. Is it possible for the clerk to actually just tell us the points that were revised in this particular bylaw? Because I don't have them side by side, so I'm not really exactly sure what parts were revised.
Mr. Harris, would you like to answer?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I think what we'll do is we'll just give an overview of the significant changes between the two bylaws and just talk about what went into the review process a bit. So fundamentally, the changes come down to essentially three areas between the proposed bylaw and the existing bylaw. And for point of reference, the existing CAO bylaw is included as attachment 2 to the report, so you can flip between the two. What we identified in the existing bylaw, first and foremost, was that there were a number of sections that had become outdated. You'll see that the existing CAO bylaw was last passed in 1994. Conditions have changed quite considerably in the intervening years. So, for example, some sections have been removed from the proposed bylaw, including the sections pertaining to, for example, the CAO's compensation, their purchasing authorities. All of those sections are now covered by other documents within the town, for example, the CAO's employment contract or the town's purchasing bylaw that governs purchasing authorities for the whole organization. Um, with respect to the bylaw itself, the structure has been updated substantially to reflect a more modern practice. It's now divided into three distinct sections, one that focuses on the general duties and responsibilities of the CAO, one that focuses on the financial and organizational management functions of the CAO, and lastly, the personnel administration. So in addition to those updates, there are two significant changes that are explained in the report. One is under financial and organizational management. As you're aware, council is currently the approving body that sets the organizational structure for the town's departments. So the CAO, if there was an interest in changing the structure of the departments themselves, forming, for example, forming a new department or dissolving a department, those would all be functions that require council's approval. The new authority that's being proposed in this bylaw is that the CAO would have the authority to make minor administrative changes within the existing department structure so that, for example, certain functions could be transferred between one department to another if it's identified that doing so could yield organizational benefits or efficiencies. The other substantial change that's proposed between the two bylaws comes under the personnel administration. If you look at the personnel administration in the existing bylaw, it essentially says that anything to do with department head positions is handled as recommendations to council. That is maintained in the proposed bylaw with the exception that the CAO be authorized to fulfill their role for performance management and monitoring for the senior management team, which includes all department heads, and the application of any discipline that's required through that performance monitoring. So that function under the old bylaw would have fallen in with all the other functions that council approves, and in the proposed bylaw, that authority rests with the CAO. Those are the substantial differences, and everything else is really to bring the bylaw up to a modern standard.
Thank you, Alec. Regional Councilor Crawford, did you have more that you wanted to ask or say?
No, thank you. I appreciate that, Madam Chair. And Alec, I had one. I don't know if it needs to actually necessarily be added in this, or if it's just something that, and it's completely. I'm open to whatever your suggestions are. Is that council be notified prior to the rest of the town when a director is resigned? I don't know if that's something that we can be assured will happen, or if that's something that needs to be noted in the bylaw.
Who would like to answer that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll speak, and then if CEO Baker would like to make comment as well, I think that would be appropriate. It could be something that you add to the bylaw. The bylaw covers duties, authorities, and responsibilities of the CAO. However, it wouldn't necessarily be consistent with kind of the higher level nature of most of the provisions of the bylaw. I think what this bylaw tries to focus on is the core responsibilities that the CAO must fulfill in serving the town and serving council, and whether something like that could be fulfilled simply through a commitment by the CAO or just a general practice might be more appropriate.
Through you, Madam Chair, this is CAO Baker. My comment is that absolutely I can commit to do my best to inform council ahead of any announcement going out to staff. But as was the experience in this past week, there were requests made of the mayor or the council where the department head was leaving to go and start new employment regarding the timing of their announcement. And in circumstances like that, it's really more important for them to get their celebration and announcement out without any type of a leak into their community. And so I honored the request of the director and the mayor at the time. So I'm happy to do what I can to inform council ahead of staff. Sometimes, depending on, in every case, it seems to be different. It was the same when Catherine Bridgman left. There was a request from Whitby to hold off for a certain amount of time. But yes, I mean, I could. In the case of last week, for instance, I could have put it out to council at noon and then staff afterwards, if that is what council's wish is.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's not that we need to have a week's notice or anything like that, but it is nice to be able to have that heads up before staff. Thank you.
Is that all your questions and comments, Marilyn? Okay, thank you. The next person who pulled this item was Councillor Tyler Moore. And Rob, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I made a mistake because this was the one that I was fine with. I figured out on my own, and it ended up the question was from the past item, and that was just about timing, whether or not CAP could be at 1 o'clock every Monday as opposed to 7 o'clock. I'll discuss that another time. I'm good. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
I got mixed up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, and the mayor had also pulled this, so I guess we'll maybe come back to it when he arrives, but also Regional Councillor Dyes. Go ahead, please, Joanne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too had a concern about, the CEO taking over, I guess, responsibility or over disciplinary action with our directors. And that's what this is pertaining to, directors of departments. Particularly, my concern is here, because we work day to day on a day-to-day basis with our directors. I understand that it's a fluid situation sometimes and its timing is everything. However, we've found in the past, if we're not updated on if there is an issue, say, and on what's happening, it's quite a surprise when it comes to us at the end of the day with terms of employment, which we still have a say over. But if we don't know that there's a problem, it can be a difficult situation. I think that, the policy or the bylaw we had in place was a good one for that reason. It just kept us abreast of any kind of issues moving forward. So it wasn't so much of a shock or surprise at the end of the day. And I just wondered if the CAO can speak to that and how this is going to work with him taking over this disciplinary action.
Through you, Madam Chair. This is more of something that is and maybe Alec can speak to this, more of a common practice in municipalities where it's part of a performance management process. Sometimes it's not always discipline. It's counseling, letters in a file, something like that. If certain performance isn't to the CAO satisfaction, I understand Councillor Dye's concern that if there was an issue that came before you regarding the terms of employment and it's because of a buildup of things that have been happening and you weren't aware of course I would report all of that to you when I came and made a recommendation if I was recommending a change in a term of employment. But I really don't see it working any different than it would with any other staff where I would work with human resources. There would be it's usually a progressive disciplinary process, starting with counseling and mentoring. And then if that doesn't work, there would be a letter in the file. And, perhaps because letter in the file would be considered discipline, perhaps if council feels more more comfortable with leaving in any type of a suspension or demotion or something, and that would be left at council's authority. I'm fine with that. This really isn't a big issue for me, other than minor performance management. I think is really not really necessary to be coming in front of council, such as counseling, mentoring, and letters and files and stuff like that.
So just to follow up on that, then council retains the right, okay, to make that decision about employment at the end of the day.
Yes, the way that this revised bylaw is written is, yes, council maintains the authority to hire and terminate department heads. It says for their appointment, promotion, demotion, and dismissal. So demotion is still there as well. So discipline is mainly counseling, mentoring, letters in a file. So that would be what it would be restricted to. If it progresses past that, then I would be required to come and report to you.
So my question then would be, is that what has been done in the past? Because again, what I'm saying is I would like to have the heads up if there's a problem before it actually comes to us for a decision.
Well, through you, Madam Chair, this is kind of a sensitive issue
I
because
know.
yeah, there's always there's personnel issues that go on a day-to-day basis, whether it's at a department head level or all the way down to frontline staff. I mean, from time to time, and some of them are resolved. And frankly, I don't know that I would want minor issues to be reported to council, because it might give you the wrong impression of the department head, and they may have just been going through an issue at the time, right? So it's better for me. I would say it would be better for me to try and see if I can mentor them and coach them through it before I bring something to you that I believe is truly a problem that can't be solved.
As long as we're kept up to date, like I say, without any surprises at the end of the day, I could live with that. But there needs to be some sort of form of communication with council, in my opinion. And thank you for the information.
Thank you, Regional Councillor Dyes. Regional Councillor Crawford, I saw your hand up. Would you like to go ahead, please?
Sure. So just following up with what Regional Councillor Dyes was saying, how do we have an assurance that that we would be getting a heads up? It kind of died flat there. I just wondered.
So I'm trying to understand what type of a heads up you require. So let's say we have a department head that just hypothetically I'm finding out is not attending work or hasn't been attending work when they were supposed to be attending work. So I meet with them, I talk to them, I counsel them. I think everything's okay, and then I hear again that they're not attending work, so I put a letter in their file. Is that something that I don't? My personal feeling is that's still an administrative function that I'm trying to manage within my authority, and may very well be resolved. So to bring that to council seems it doesn't seem to me anyway that's something that council needs to be dealing with. If it continues on after I've attempted to correct it, then absolutely I would bring it to council's attention and say this is something that is remaining a problem and it's been a problem for a while, and here's what I've done about it, and here's my recommendation moving forward.
I just wanted to say that I did a little bit of investigation, kind of on the standard CAO position, not necessarily in municipalities, but in, I'll call it the other workplace. And this is actually quite standard, and that most CAOs do not have to report to a board on disciplinary actions, but that, of course, through HR, you would have to document everything so that if you did come to us with a dismissal recommendation, then that could all be reviewed at that time. I just wonder, how, and I'm certainly not saying this about you because this is now, you're now our third CAO. Joanne and I, we're on our third CAO. So it's more about a generalized, this applies to all CAOs that would be in here. What if a staff member felt that they were being treated unfairly? Is their option, what is their options to, they can't come to council. So what would be their options if they felt in that position? Now, I don't know if CAO Baker can answer that or if that's a question for Alec.
I can answer that because it's actually a human resources question through Madam Chair. All members of staff have the ability to go to human resources and make a complaint under the respect to the workplace policy. So if they feel that they're being harassed in any way by any supervisor or manager or any peer staff, actually, they can make a complaint to human resources. And you're absolutely right. Any disciplinary action that would be taken, whether it would be a counseling session that would be documented, put in the file, their personnel file, or a letter, written warning that would be put in their file. Human resources would be involved in every section, every piece of discipline. So yes, if and when I needed to come to you and talk to you about things that I've been dealing with, then there would be a complete file on what had been done to date.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Regional Councillor Crawford. And next I saw the hand of Regional Councillor Lee. Go ahead, please.
Just through the chair to the process being outlined by Regional Councillor Dyes and Crawford, I guess this is to the clerk. I am a new councillor, so I wouldn't have the experience of dealing with the previous CAOs. Would it be expected that the CAO contact us if there was a staff issue, but with the previous CAOs? I just want to make sure that we are being at least consistent with the process.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm afraid I'm unable to comment on that as well, for my tenure does not extend too far back into many previous CAOs as well. What I will say is I think the communication process that CAO Baker has outlined is a logical one and a consistent one with what we see amongst other municipalities, and that dividing line where performance management and discipline escalates to council is appropriately set as it's defined here in this bylaw.
And when the bylaw was written, ultimately, I'm assuming that the clerk or the clerk's office would have vetted other Durham region municipalities or like-sized municipalities set to ours to ensure there's a kind of conformity between the rules for the CAO, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We did examine the CAO bylaws for the other lakeshore municipalities in Durham, as well as a handful from the rest of the GTA that are of a comparable size and structure as the town.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because, again, this is my first CAO, so I want to make sure that it's consistent to previous, which it sounds like it is. So no further questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Regional Councillor Dyes, did I see your hand go up again?
You did, thank you.
Go for it.
And I hear that all the time about how we've done our research with other municipalities and it's going this way. And I know there are trends in a lot of areas, but we are autonomous in a lot of ways too. And we like to run our towns and cities a little differently sometimes. We're not a bunch of lemmings. All I'm asking for is when it gets to a point that the CAO feels that the disciplinary action is increasing, that there might be a future decision coming down, that council be well informed about that. Because I think it's really important and it does make it easier at the end of the day when you have information and you have knowledge about what is happening. So no, we don't need to see every single thing. So I just need assurances that we have that communication in place just in case.
Respond to that, CAO Baker.
Through you, Madam Chair. I can definitely, if I'm going through a process that I'm trying to work with any member or any manager in the organization is trying to work with a member of staff and we're following a progressive performance management process that may include or does include discipline, then absolutely I can bring that to council. Sometimes things come out of the woodwork where we become aware of things that we didn't even know were existing that I need to come to you immediately about. So, but in either case, yes, this particular CAO is committed to keeping you advised at the appropriate time so that you're not caught off guard.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. Are there other questions? So I just have one, and that is to CAO Baker's comment that if someone is feeling uncomfortable or feeling that they're being treated unfairly, and who should they go to? And the answer was AR through harassment in the workplace, etc. I just would like to know, how often is that message communicated to employees, and how is it? Like, is it a reminder? Because maybe we just forget in our day-to-day function that there are avenues that they could go down if they're feeling something. So when and how often do we communicate that to our staff?
So I don't have that information in front of me now as to tell you how often we communicate it, but I will tell you that as a general rule, if staff are feeling harassed or uncomfortable at work for whatever reason, they know that the place for them to go is human resources. So then they'll go to human resources, they will talk to them about what their issue is, and at that time, human resources will advise them as to whether or not they believe it's a potential respect in the workplace issue, and if so, this is the policy, and this is how you go through that. So they'll advise them as to how they deal with the situation that they're in. But I can follow up and find out how often staff are advised of that. But it's my understanding that it's commonly known amongst staff that is an avenue that they can follow.
Great, thank you. And that's done in confidence, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Okay, the motion is that the proposed Chief Administrative Officer bylaw be approved by Council. May I have a mover for that, please? I see Councillor Khan. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, the motion's carried. Okay, let's move to item 4.3, which is contract award Lakeview Boulevard reconstruction and top lift. And that was first pulled by Councillor Tyler Moran. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know, is Mr. Romanovsky and I guess Mr. Greaves on this call. So we see once again, and I'm always happy that other wards are getting things done, and this is a very important street on Ajax. And I see speed humps are going to be installed on Lakeview Boulevard. And they already know where I'm going with this, but in Ward 1, we have Sims and Delaney and Ravenscroft and McGill and Rutherglen and Fletcher, just to name a few, that we're desperately trying to bring traffic calming to. And we have an experiment, which is a deeper conversation with bollards on Ravenscroft. We just want to, I just want to express how excited I am when I see that you're installing speed bumps on Lakeview Boulevard, and that you would consider that for the streets I just mentioned in our ward. You know, the term is going along, and I think it's time that we sort of cut to the chase on a lot of these initiatives. And that being a great example, I couldn't give up the opportunity to bring it up today. So that's just more of a comment and you know, a nudge or maybe a question that you could apply speed bumps to all the streets I just mentioned. But I understand there's protocols and processes, and you know that I understand that, but I wanted to mention it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Romanowski or Director Romanowski, do you want to respond to that?
I actually don't mind.
Oh, sorry.
It's Dave Meredith.
Thanks, Dave.
I'm just, again, it's just to provide a bit of background and context to the Lakeview Boulevard reconstruction. What had happened with respect to Lakeview Boulevard, it was actually subject to an EA. When we closed and realigned Lakeview Boulevard within the last couple of years, we completed an EA for the realigned portion, which is what happened in this place. And there was much discussion about the relationship of the waterfront and the park to the road itself, and a number of safety concerns that were raised through the public consultation process as part of the environmental assessment. And it was through that process that we had identified reduced speeds of 30 kilometers an hour, the introduction of speed bumps, and a reduced right-of-way, which was to traffic calm and slow traffic down through that particular neck. So while I understand Councillor Moran's comments about speed bumps, and we can have that discussion, just with respect to Lakeview Boulevard, it was a very isolated design scenario that came about as a result of the EA process and the issue of public safety in this area. So it is somewhat unique in how the speed bumps came about in this particular location. So that's more just for some background and context. And I wouldn't necessarily want the same standard applied to all of our local roads in town.
Thank you, Mr. Meredith. Any other questions or comments from you, Councillor Tyler Moran, before we go to the next person? Okay, thank you. Welcome, Mayor Collier. You were the next person to pull item 4.3. Would you like to ask your questions now?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and my apologies to everybody for my tardiness. I was running behind, but I'm here now. Just let me pull this up. I actually wasn't sure what we were on just a second. Oh, mine was to do with the financial implications. And I looked back on the detail sheet from the last capital project award, and because I when I saw that the available budget would automatically be transferred towards the detailed design of Range Line Road, I looked back on the last capital budget sheet, and here, if you look in the report on page 31 of the report, project number 1013811, and it shows Lakeview, and Range Road design. But there's no breakdown on this as to how much of the 1.05 million was for Lakeview Boulevard reconstruction, how much for the top lift, and how much for the Range Road design. So we really have no idea right now whether we're over budget or under budget. If that original $1 million capital estimate, 250 was put aside for the Range Road design, that means we're actually way over budget. So I just would like to just get clarification on how much is allocated for each one, and also for finance. Just this says project number 1013811, but when you go back to the capital budget, I couldn't find it because in the capital budget, this is project number ENG 069. So for cross-reference, I think we need to be more clear for that as well, to be able to go back and look at these things. And I guess through you to Ms. Valentin or whoever. Chair?
Thank you. Who would like to respond to the mayor?
Thank you, through your chair. Hello, Mayor Collier. For the upcoming budget, we will look at that. I think it's a great recommendation to bring forward the costing on each line item there if it is available. So we'll work towards that for the upcoming budget. And I know from my past experience, when we do bring forward a budget, it is identified with a numeric and, alphanumeric through the budget process. And once it gets approved, it then changes to another unique numbering system. So what we will try to do is in the report then identify a cross-reference for council moving forward.
Thank you. And first of all, welcome. This is your first meeting with us, I think, and welcome to Team Ajax.
Thanks,
great addition. Yeah, I think I talked to you about something along this line last week as well, just that when we're looking at our detail sheets, I always like more information rather than less. So it could be as easy as in the project number, leaving the ENG 069 and also putting the numeric one next to it going forward. But one other thing that I had asked be included going forward in the last budget was just the date on the detail sheets showing when this project was added to the long range capital forecast. just so we can look back and see if this goes back to 2015 or if this was something that was fairly newly introduced. I know it wasn't, but just for that information. So Ms. Valentin, do you not have the breakdown as far as to how much was for each of the piece?
Through you, Madam Chair, I personally don't. This is my second week or third week,
Yeah.
but it's something that I can review with staff. And yes, there will be some discussions on what information in the next budget comes forward and how it can be easier for council to review.
Okay, thank you. Just through you, Chair, to Mr. Meredith, are you able to guesstimate approximately what the design cost is going to be for Rangeline Road? Do you think the 101,000 is enough to cover that?
I would think it's enough to cover it. We would have the backup for any of the budget line items that we do have here, and we would be able to support it. My guess is that we would be within the $100,000 range for the Rangeline works. I don't see it being something that we would look to entertain and go beyond what the approved budget is.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of my questions, Chair. And if you don't have a mover for this item, I don't mind moving it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Collier.
Chair, you're muted.
You're muted.
So I said all of that and nobody heard it.
No.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Regional Councillor Dyes was also on the list of council to pull this item. Do you have questions, Joanne?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My questions have been answered.
Great, thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, so this report is item 4.3, and the mover, Mayor Collier, has requested to move this item, so that's fine. And by show of hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much. So the next item called was 4.4, which was contract award Range Road reconstruction. This was pulled by 2 members of council, the first one being Mayor Collier. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm very, very glad to see this project going ahead. As everybody, I think, knows, we did defer this from last year, pending the decision from the region as far as the Ontario Water Project, which thankfully is approved and is now going ahead. My question is, because at first look of this, somebody might look at this and say, oh, hey, we're 800,000 over budget. I just wonder through Mr. Meredith, and I know this may have been when you were not part of operations that this detail sheet was done, but how are these estimates put together? I don't want anybody accusing council of deferring something and it costing more money later. Can you tell me how this is estimated and what reasons there are for this to be the number that it is, please?
Yeah, I do have Reniel on the line as well, Reniel Fernando, who is more of the direct project manager, who has provided the detailed budget estimates and is the construction manager, who may be in a better position to support the numbers that were put forward from a budgeting standpoint. Reniel, I don't know if you can chime in.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Through the chair, we looked at the bid analysis that the region provided us compared to the previous bid that we did that was awarded to Marking, and in looking at the difference in costs, some of the materials such as the granular A, granular B, the asphalt prices, they've all sort of gone up since the last award. On top of that, the region also has a 10% contract admin fee that they put on for administration and inspection as well. And we also carried a 15% contingency on this as well. So that kind of brought the price up quite a bit.
Why would the region add the 10%? This is a local road.
Because, through the chair, sorry, the region is doing the contract admin and inspection for this project. And generally when they do a project, they charge the town a 10% fee for administration, contract admin, inspection altogether.
Why, since this is a local road, why aren't we doing that? Like, we deferred the project. If this project had gone ahead last year or whenever it was, wouldn't we have been running the project?
Through the chair, that is correct. When during recess, the region approached us and informed us that they are going ahead with the water main project for both Ontoro and Range. At that time, it was decided that we would let the region lead the project. In other words, we had the design already completed, and we let the region award the contract and lead the whole project, because their component of the project was a much larger component than the roadworks.
Well,
So
I'm trying to
therefore,
understand why we would pay them for this privilege.
Can I actually, I can speak to sort of the relationship that we have with the region when it comes to these types of projects. There's numerous projects that we've done over the years. I can think of Boland Crescent. I can think of King's Crescent, where it's a combined effort between the town and the region, where we may be doing sanitary and or water plus road works. What would typically happen, and in those cases for King's Crescent and Boland, the town of Ajax was the lead. We charged a 10% to the region because we are the contract administrators and oversaw that project. So that's something on a project by project basis. We work with the region, whoever's the contract administrator, whoever's resources, because essentially in this case, it'll be regional resources that are administering the project. If we're the lead, it is municipal staff that are the inspectors and the project managers and contract administrators. So typically it's one or the other that takes the lead, and it's standard practice to apply a 10% administrative fee to that particular, I guess, host or contract lead. So it's not an uncommon practice at all.
So when we're getting almost in the capital budget season, does that mean we're going to have to go back and revisit all of our potential projects for next year and the year after based on increased costs of materials?
No, these are only for reconstruction. So a road resurfacing, which is 90% of the budget, is something that is administered by the town. There's no administrative fees unless there was a consultant, but it's all done in-house. It's only for those major reconstructions whereby it's a joint partnership with the region.
No, I meant considering costs of the granular materials and, you know, the base materials going up, which is what Renil said, that the material costs had gone up. That's why this is higher on the budget.
Correct. And we take sort of current year practices or current year costs, and we update our detail sheets on an annual basis to reflect current costs. Through our processes internally, we identify if there's a capital project that we estimate going to be a cost increase of greater than 10%. We go through that exercise right now to identify those projects, and we identify sort of what's driving that cost increase. So that's a process that we're right in the middle of as it relates to capital budgets.
All right, and that was what I was asking. Now, to the frontage charges, the last term of council approved paying the frontage fees on the two Town of Ajax owned properties. Is that amount included in this bottom line, the 800,000?
Yes, I believe it's been factored in. I think there's a reference to it on the sort of in the finance section where there's a dollar value that was allocated and sort of is being pre-approved through this process.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out, that was something that was actually approved last term of council. It's just carried forward when we supported the petition for the water for those residents. So, okay, thank you very much.
That's all your questions, Mayor?
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person to pull this item was Regional Councilor Dyes. Go ahead, please. You're on mute, Joanne.
Thank you. I'm also really pleased to see this going through, but I've had my questions answered by staff, and that was pertaining to the land that the town owns in this instance. So basically, because it's in the green belt, is why we are not going forward with that hookup. So thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments at this time? Thank you, Councillor Tyler Moore, and go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm very happy this is going through as well. This council received a report of the meeting of Regional Council on October 23rd, 2019, and is speaking specifically of the Works Committee report. So that construction of the water main on Range Road, Lakeridge Road, and Ontoro Boulevard in the town of Ajax be considered in the 2020 water supply system capital budget, and that the construction of a water main on Fielding Court in the town of Ajax be considered in the proposed 2020 water supply system capital budget. And that was carried at the regional level. So, albeit it's in Ward 2, my friends in Ward 2, but I thought Fielding Court was part and parcel with Range Road, Ontario Road, Lake Ridge, and that the water main construction will be done at the same time in all 4 streets, or the same time-ish. Can somebody speak to Fielding Court, please?
Separate project.
Who would like to answer that?
I can probably answer it.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Well, this would be a separate project. I mean, Fielding would be run on. I think that would be a separate tender, and that would be a completely separate project, is my understanding of it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Meredith.
I'm just going to say it would be a separately tendered project. I don't have the specific timelines as far as where the region's at in that process. Reneel, I'm not 100% certain if you're on the line, if you have any idea of timelines.
Through the chair, the what I know for sure is that both Ontario and Range is being completed now. I don't have any information about the Fielding Court right now. But I can, I mean, if I can get that information to you if that's required. I can call up the region and find out.
Yes, if you, through you, Madam Chair, if you can, because the people, again, this is a Ward 2 street, so I'm treading lightly, but I know people on the street that were told at the time, they knew that it all went through at the same time at the region. So now they see that, you know, it's coming to fruition for our friends on Ontario, which is great, but they're wondering, what about us? Okay, thank you. If we get that information, that'd be great.
Just to add, Madam Chair, if I may, if you do drive by there, you can see the stakes are in the ground, and it looks like they have been marking everything out and are getting ready to start. So when I went by there, I assumed it was imminent.
On Fielding, sir, through the chair. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Okay, may I please have a mover for the recommendations in this report? I see Regional Councillor Lee. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's passed. Thank you. Oops. Okay, so the final item that was pulled to talk about is 4.6, the second amendment to the North Station Street Property Agreement of Purchase and Sale, Redem Development Limited. And that was pulled by 2 members of council. The first one is Mayor Collier. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to, who's the person on this? I think it's Nadia. I'm just wondering, I don't know why we would make an agreement of purchase and sale contingent on an approved development concept. This sale, I think, was done 3 years ago, and it's been tied up for all that time, and it appears now we need another deadline. Why are we making this simple real estate transaction contingent and drawing it out, please?
Is Nadia on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I
Okay.
was on mute. So the reason why we typically require a development concept and development timelines is to remove the possibility that land will be sold and a developer will just sit on it and land hold it. We want to see property developed, and we establish the deadlines to ensure that progress continues to be made. So I know in this situation we're extending deadlines, but Ledem Development has demonstrated that they are dedicated to the project. They've met timelines to date, but circumstances come up. So, and they've kind of shown that they are dedicated, and we're prepared to extend the deadlines to accommodate that.
So we're going to extend it to March 2021.
Correct. And keep in mind as well, we've added a buffer to those dates. We don't anticipate that it will take that long, but we've added about a 3-month buffer just to ensure that we don't need to come back for a further amendment.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Considering we're 3 years into this now, I don't know that I'd be interested in extending it further. Like, these guys need to get this done.
Yes.
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Collier, we have indicated that to the developers as well when we were going into discussions about amending the agreement. I also do want to point out it took the developer 1.5 years to make first it took them 1 year to make the initial submission from the time of purchasing the land in 2017, so a full year to make a submission. And then it took them a year and a half to respond to the first submission comments. This has a number of projects though going on within the town as well. So we're also balancing that with their other projects that they're working on. And from what we understand, based on their second submission, which we just received at the end of July, there's not a lot of major comments coming out of this next go around. Really, we're just nailing down some of the design details, and then we'll be proceeding with a minor variance application as the final approvals prior to issuing the site plan approval.
So thank you for that, Mr. Romanowski. Back again to Natty for a second. So we're talking about building permit applications. So closing date May 1st next year, building permit application November 1st. What measures do we have in place? Like once we close on May 1st, what's stopping them from just saying, like, how solid is this commitment that we have to getting a building permit by November 1st?
The
building permit
ownership of the lands won't transfer to Ledham from the town until they reach those milestones.
Okay.
So at present, the town of Ajax still owns the property.
Until when? 2023?
Until closing, which is, I believe, 30 days after site plan approval.
Okay, because this is closing date May 1st, 2021.
Yep.
And then building permit application November 1st, 2021, and construction commencement May 1st, 2022. So the closing date is 2021 before building permit application.
Yes, and I believe the reason for that is because they can't submit for building permits unless they own the land.
And I get that. What I'm asking is what commitment or what security do we have that will happen once we close? It's nice to put it in this agreement, but is this agreement legally binding? If they don't submit their building permit application before November 1st, 2021, do we take the land back?
I believe according to the agreement, and I can confirm by just taking a second look at it, that we do have the right to take the land back.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. I'll just, you've answered my questions. Thank you. I'll just close with, actually, no, I have one more. This process, as far as asking or making sure that they do an application, is that reviewed from time to time?
Sorry, is that with regards to a building permit application or?
Whenever we dispose of a piece of town land, in this case, and we make a contingent on the project application, I'm wondering how often is this the process we're always going to follow, or do we look at this process from time to time and see if there's areas that need to be tweaked?
These types of situations where we dispose of land don't happen very frequently. So in the past, it seemed to work, and it's just something that we've continued to do so. But if that's a process that you'd like us to relook at, we could certainly do that. This is just how we've established the best way to retain some kind of control over the process and of the development.
Okay, we've got a very small inventory of vacant land, both residential and commercial. And we have a very high demand. We have people looking and wanting and asking me all the time, almost on a daily basis, we want to come and build, we want to come and develop, but there's no land available. And then we've got a company here tying up a piece for 3 years. So going forward, I would actually want to have much tighter timelines in these types of agreements. I can think of a couple of pieces of property we have. I would like to have much tighter timelines in these type of agreements. So like Jeff said, they don't wait a year before they make their first application and a year and a half before they respond to comments. So just something to think of going forward, please.
Yep, we can take that into consideration the next time something like this comes about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Regional Councillor Dyes, you had some questions as well?
No, I'm good, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions or comments at this time? Okay, none. So may I please have a mover for the
Move
recommendations
it.
in this report? I see Regional Councillor Crawford. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, and that carries. Thank you. So let's move on to section 5.1, which is a discussion regarding crossing guard program lunchtime coverage. And we have the interim director of operations, Dave Meredith, and the office supervisor, Amanda Hines. Take it away, please.
Hello, it's Dave Meredith. We put on for discussion. I'm going to provide a bit of an overview with respect to staff's report and staff's recommendation to council. Obviously, when staff were putting this report together, the town is part of the Ontario Traffic Council, and through that process, we've had lots of ongoing discussion with numerous municipalities across the province as it relates to best practice for crossing guard programs. Specifically, and you'll see attached in the report, a survey of 23 municipalities, whereby the vast majority either do not provide lunchtime coverage or they do provide lunchtime coverage, but at high priority locations. So that was one component of staff's process to come forward with the recommendations, but also in recent years, there's been declining numbers in the number of children going home at lunchtime. We get reports directly from our crossing guards where in many cases they have no crossings, they have maybe one or two. Some of them are older kids in grades 7 and 8, but the crossing guard program is typically for children between junior kindergarten and grade 5. So there's been, in many situations, low to no students crossing at lunchtime in many of our school locations. And this is part of some school policy changes. Some schools are moving to, a couple of nutritional breaks over the course of a day as opposed to a traditional lunch hour. So there's a number of changes, and they do happen differently at different schools within Ajax and across the region. So really what the intent of this recommendation was based on sort of what's happening elsewhere in other jurisdictions, what's happening in Ajax as far as policy changes and observations with respect to declining numbers. Staff were making a recommendation to discontinue the lunchtime coverage of crossing guards at the majority of our locations. There's 3 that are still identified within the report to remain open at lunchtime. And I think within that report, we've also indicated that we're willing to have further discussions with the school boards as it relates to, are there other locations which warrant sort of lunchtime coverage? And I think we'd obviously go through a process, but I think based on our information and what we've been provided, we're comfortable with the recommendation that's made within staff's report. Through the process, we've had conversations through the month of August with the Durham Student Transportation Services. We've been in contact with their staff. Some of it was just trying to finalize their hours, whether they're going to go on rotating lunches, what the beginning of the day and end of day was going to look like so that we could coordinate the hours for our crossing guards as well. So we've had multiple conversations with DSTS throughout the past month as it relates to sort of the hours and coverage. And that's been part of our process. And we obviously had conversations with DSTS regarding the elimination of lunch coverage through that process. And I think many of you are aware, we weren't really finalized the actual hours of school until pretty much the week prior to Labor Day. So we were sort of running and chasing a little bit. We made attempts over the course of the summer to try and get contact information of school principals to have conversations with the individual schools. That was not as successful as we would have hoped. So that's sort of in a nutshell, sort of the background in terms of where staff are at and the recommendations that are being made. As I mentioned, this is consistent with guidelines that we have that's been established by MTO and the Ontario Traffic Council. And we did complete our crossing guard sort of school management program last year. It focused on sort of our guard crossing locations and times. Most of the information related to early morning and afternoons because the volumes at lunch hour were so low. So we have a fair amount of background information that's led to this recommendation. I do want to stress that we are in no way changing the early morning and end of day coverage as it relates to our crossing guards. That remains the same. This is strictly the lunch hour or the lunchtime coverage. So I would be pleased to answer any questions that members of council may have.
Where did chair go? Chair Bauer.
I think she fell off the Carl. Who's the vice chair?
I am. Councillor Tyler Morin.
Why don't you take over until Lisa gets back?
I'll continue on. Are there any comments or questions? We'll start with Regional Councillor Sterling Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to Director Meredith. My first question. Oh, sorry. My first question is: Did this process go through the IMO process to get public feedback on it?
No, it did not.
So I think that's a key point of concern. So obviously over the weekend, between social media, emails, calls, some council got bombarded with contact points of parents upset with the decision or the possible decision. And whereas I don't disagree with the principle behind it, where to go from 57 to 3 for lunchtime is a jarring change that affects, from the feedback we got, quite a few people that I personally would have liked to have seen more feedback from the community to see whether it was warranted. I understand the stats say one thing, and 154,000 saved a year is nothing to scoff at. But I think, I don't, especially with COVID right now, I don't think we have a full picture of the number of kids going back. Because, for example, we heard over the weekend that some schools had removed their lunch programs and were asking to go home for lunch or various forms of that. And that's not reflected in this report, and there's no way it could be reflected. Well, actually, no, I think there could be a way to reflect this in the report by kind of deep diving with these 57 schools and getting more information, getting more comprehensive numbers, whether it's counts from the crossing guards themselves. And, I want to see savings at the town. I think we're going into very hard years over the next few years with our budget. But at the same time, though, all it takes is for one accident to happen. All it takes is for one, accident, and all of a sudden, it was a preventable accident because we didn't listen to feedback. So, I personally would like to see this brought back to staff. I wouldn't. Again, if the numbers are there that it's 1 or 2 kids using it, then I think that's something that we can look at. But if the amount of feedback we got is reflective to the number of parents who think their kids use the lunchtime crossing guard program, then I think we have a gap between what our stats say and what the reality is. And I will leave it at that. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Regional Councillor Lee. Mayor Collier, I believe you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start, one thing, it looks like Councillor Bauer is back, but she's muted. I just want to ask, are we using the chat box or are we raising hands for questions? What would you prefer?
Do you want me to answer? Should I take it over now as chair? Thank you, Rob, for filling me in. Sorry about that, everyone. I don't know what happened. I got kicked out. So regarding taking questions, I had been, for this discussion only, I had been approached by council members letting me know they had questions. So I had the names written down. I don't believe we are using the chat function. We're going by show of hands.
Okay.
That's my understanding anyway. So I don't know where we left off. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I'll just ask my questions. I just I had put it in the chat box, but then I raised my hand after, so I just wanted to clarify. Notwithstanding the whole, I don't understand why the municipal taxpayers are responsible for crossing guards for schools question. I do understand that that is because, you know, the school crossing guard guidelines were established by MTO, and they said that these costs should be borne by the municipal taxpayers, which doesn't make sense to me because 15% of our taxes that we pay go to the school board for education. And I think the school board should be the ones to administer this program, and that way they can do what they want. Because Council Lee is right. The school board trustees, Donna Edwards specifically, was going out of her way to really stir this up on social media and try and make us all look bad. But quite honestly, this should be her responsibility. This should not even fall on us. This is a download. And I just want to make that very clear, because our responsibility isn't to the school board trustees. Our responsibility is to the taxpayers that elect us. And we have to be responsible to those taxpayers. And that is a financial responsibility as well. So when we look at things and we look at changing demographics and the fact that, you know, a lot of kids are going to be doing online learning this year. A number of schools have decided not to let their kids go home at lunchtime. You know, these things are things that we have to review and pivot, because if we have people standing out, if we have 71 crossing guards, I think or the number was, standing out doing nothing, we're going to be getting phone calls. I get, you know, people when they see an empty bus, or when they see, you know, somebody out cutting the grass and they're I don't know, standing on their phone or something. I mean, we have to be responsible as well. And I think it's only the proper thing to look at this and have this evaluation done and consider the ramifications. And yeah, $150,000 is a large piece of money. And especially in these times, and especially considering the fact that we have a lot of other financial pressures and we're not able to run a deficit. These are very important things that have to be looked at as well, outside of a particular school board trustee trying to fan the flames on social media. So I just wanted to make that very clear before I ask my questions, because that's not fair to try us publicly on social media because of a recommendation and a report that council hasn't even had the opportunity to discuss yet. That's our obligation, to look at this and have those discussions. And I think that specific school board trustee should have probably waited until we'd done that before she started to try and get everybody all worked up, because that really frustrates me. Let us do our jobs. To my questions, Mr. Meredith, and thank you for looking into this and providing this report. I personally am inclined to agree. But again, I wonder what the time frame is. If we make a decision, as Councillor Lee suggested, to send this back for more details to get those specific numbers, what would that do to the program? Are we under any specific timelines?
We're under no specific timelines. Obviously, we were trying to coincide it with the start of the school year and getting this to the first council meeting in September. But there's no, you know, prescribed or definitive timeline where this needs to come into effect. This is a staff recommendation, and the timelines are as proposed within the report.
Okay. How long do you think it would take to get that information? So if we went ahead with the program now, which I assume we have our full complement of crossing guards out there at lunchtime now. Is that correct, since we haven't made any changes yet?
We have our crossing guards out there. They're all retained. They did not work last week during lunch, but that's a simple conversation which each of the guards, if it does get referred back to staff, to have them restart and reconvene their lunchtime coverage.
How would we go about getting this data? Are the crossing guards equipped to provide us that feedback, or would we need to actually have staff or somebody out doing the counts over, say, a week at each stop?
Yeah, we would have we'd have conversations with each of the crossing guards. We also have crossing guard rovers that are going around that supervise and look after each of or sections or segments within the town as well. So we do have the ability within the existing portfolio to gather some additional data during the month of September.
Okay, so it would be possible to do that and report back in October.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. I've spoken to this at a bit of length because I was a bit annoyed with it, but not with it, but with what that other individual did. If somebody wanted to refer this back to do that, to review and get those numbers, I would certainly support that. Thank you very much.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I made a mistake when I took over as chair, and Regional Councillor Crawford was first in the speaking, and I didn't realize that. So I apologize to her and just wanted you to know that.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler Moore. And again, my apologies. I had some difficulties, so I missed most of the conversation. Maybe what I'll do is I will just get caught up myself. The order of speakers that I had: Regional Councillor Crawford, Councillor Tyler Morin, Regional Councillor Dyes, Mayor Collier, and Councillor Khan. I know the mayor has spoken, and I know Regional Councillor Crawford has not. So I would like to call on her if there are still comments to be made and no action to be taken on what the mayor has just about.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly this has created quite the discussion. I think that being a former school board trustee, the problem has been has been for years and decades where the town doesn't communicate with the board doesn't communicate with the town. There's this all misinformation and misunderstanding. I tried to call Trustee Edwards twice, left a message, did not get a call back. I'm just curious, they're talking, she sent us an email today about the secondary school students would be bused, were eligible, walking, that the cafeterias were closed. Was any of this information given to our staff prior to this email that was sent to us today?
I have not received any of that information firsthand. I do have Amanda Hines on the line as well, who's the supervisor for our Crossing Guard program as well. Amanda, I'm not sure if you've received any additional information regarding the high school program side of things.
Hi there, sorry, through the chair. I've not received any recent as of this weekend or beyond, if that's what you're asking about. We do know that high school students are not starting until today in Catholic schools. They were on staggered starts since the beginning of last week and have continued onward from there. Did I answer that question or was there another piece?
No, thank you. I did want to ask also, we were accused of taking out permanent lunchtime crossing guards on Friday without this being approved. Can you confirm or deny whatever that was, that something was sent to the DSTS about that?
There was communication that's been had with DSTS going back to the end of August, mid to end of August, about the removal of lunch time for both the Catholic schools and the public schools. And that was initiated on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. I do, if I look at the relationship to the strategic plan, which I always do, thank you very much. I understand that this was provided as part of an innovation program teaming, exploring areas where we could save money. And so for that, I don't think we've had very many recommendations under the innovation initiative. So I do understand your intention, and I appreciate the fact that you looked into this. I wonder though, are these numbers all based on last year's school year?
Are you referencing the numbers in relation to the number of crossing guards, or are you talking financial? Sorry, I just want some clarification.
Yeah, both actually.
Okay, so the financial piece is actually current data. So that's all with respect to current rates of pay for all of our staffing. And when we look at information related to the number of municipalities that we surveyed, that was all within 2020.
Okay, thank you. I think that I echo everything that my fellow counselors have said, that this being such an odd year, even that, I mean, last week, so many kids were kind of staggered into 1 day and 2 days. This week is like 3 days. High schools just went back this week. I don't even know if public, because I'm not connected with that anymore. I would really like to take a pause, as Regional Councillor Lee had mentioned, to do a further analysis on this before we, make a final decision on this. I really do appreciate you looking at the numbers and coming up with a cost savings here. But I think that it's important, simply because of the way the school year is kind of panning out, that we kind of take a step back on it. But thank you very much for your report.
Thank you, Regional Councillor Crawford. The next councillor that I had written down was Councillor Tyler Morin. Have you already asked your questions, Rob?
I have not, and it was Sterling. Regional Councillor Lee had already spoken, and so moving on to me, I just want to get it straight, because we're kind of getting a mixed amount of information here. I don't know if staff can Claire. We're getting residents telling us that they're speaking to crossing guards, and those crossing guards, invariably, they're saying, hey, where were you yesterday for lunch? And they're saying, oh, our budget's been cut. We're not getting paid anymore. Are all the, I think it's 57 locations, are all the crossing guards still in place now? Is that what was said? Because I'm getting mixed messages. Some parents are telling me that there is no crossing guard at lunch, for instance, at Church Street and Kingston Road now. Is that, do you have any?
Yeah, for this past week, that would be correct. So if there's, hours being cut in terms of not being available at lunchtime, that would be correct. The hours, and Amanda can speak to them, whether they've been adjusted or not, sort of in the morning or the afternoons, but they've been modified to reflect the times when each school opens and sort of what their timing is for the end of day. So we review those hours. We review those hours on a routine basis with the school boards to make sure that we're aligned with their start and end of day. For those particular times, they've remained the same.
Okay, so I'm going to request, I know there's 3 right now, Williams-Salem, that we add Kingston Road and Church Street to the list and make it 4. I know there's a deeper dive that needs to be done in this, and it's a much wider discussion, but in the immediate, I don't know if that's possible to increase the 3 to 4 or 5 or 6 for now, while I'm just as excited as anybody else to save $150,000 for the town. I would ask that that be done, but I don't know if it's possible that we can set it up so that moving forward, if we see an intersection, or the students see an intersection, or teachers or parents, that this has a little bit of flexibility, rather than saying this is exactly what we're doing. Could we, like over a 6-month period, maybe the first school year, just a thought, because I'm sure there's other counselors listening to me right now thinking, well, wait a second, I have this intersection. But I'm asking formally if we can add Church Street and Kingston Road to the list, the short-term list, please.
2 things. I might be able to answer that one once council's through their discussion, and depending on the direction that staff may be getting as it relates to the lunchtime coverage. So I think that's something that we can deal with. I think with respect to how we build the program going forward, I think flexibility is always something that we would look to incorporate within the program. It's the discussion that we would want to have with the school boards or individual schools and principals. If there are particular locations that require attention, that's been our normal course of practice for the last several years. We've added guards at certain locations where there's been problems in mid-year. So that's part of our normal course of business, is to maintain connection to our guards, to the principals, to DSTS, and make those types of decisions. So we've always got that flexibility built into the program, and it's something that we would want to continue on a go-forward basis. So your questions but your specific questions relating to Kingston Road and Highway 2, I think I can answer depending on the final decision that's made by council.
Follow-up, Madam Chair, perhaps a rare follow-up from me.
Go ahead, please.
Might I suggest, and I don't know where this would fall into this discussion, that we stayed, the removal of crossing guards during lunch until we get on the other side of this. And I thought when Mayor Collier was asking us questions, that was the scenario. But again, I don't know if this is the right time to ask for that, but maybe hearing everyone else, that's something that we could look at. Just keep it as it is until we look further into this. I'll leave it up to you, Madam Chair, to that question. Thanks.
Okay, so I would like to have every councillor have their opportunity to talk and ask questions. So maybe we'll finish up with everyone's comments and questions and then go back to, I'm not sure if you're moving something or not, Rob. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so the next councillor who wanted to speak on this is Regional Councillor Dawes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll keep it short for Councillor Khan. He's been waiting a long time. I recognize that. Anyway, so from the conversation, I gleaned that the last pieces of information we've had from the school board has basically been mid-August. Is that correct?
Mr. Meredith or Ms. Hines?
Yep. Through the chair. Yes, the conversations we had with the school board date back to the end of August. We were notified of their decision to continue forward with lunches because there was a question as to whether the Durham District School Board and the Durham Catholic District School Board were going to even allow any children out for lunch or whether they were going to hold lunches and have modified days. So we received word after the 20th of August that in fact they were going to have lunches at schools, and those conversations started.
So my understanding is that is being imposed because of the COVID issue. So it's a situation that's very fluid, and it's a very emotional situation when we try to save some money, particularly when it pertains to children's safety, and hence all of the emails. From speaking with Trustee Edwards at the DDSB, their transportation department weren't aware or were made aware of what we were going to do through this posting of this agenda. So of course, they're doing their job too. They need to get the information out there as well. So, I think it's important. I'm not comfortable moving forward with this until we go back to the school boards. And there's many school boards. It's a complicated issue. Go back and find out what they're doing during COVID, what they anticipate may happen in the future. It's a very fluid situation. This might not be a permanent solution. This might be a temporary thing. We don't know until we go back and get that information from the school boards and assess the situation. So I really, in my opinion, I as well agree with my colleagues in deferring this. Because it's changing all the time. Things change today again at the school board with information because they're dealing with the realities on the numbers that they're getting at school and the numbers that are going online. And that's going to fluctuate again with a second wave coming. So we need to have a couple of plans in place, in my opinion, but we really need to have that conversation with all of the school boards prior to making this decision. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Okay, and Councillor Khan, you've been waiting patiently. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and through the chair to Mr. Meredith. Mr. Meredith, you said that this study was done last year. This would have been pre-pandemic, correct?
The survey of municipalities was done during the early part of 2020. The school management plan that was presented to council was completed in 2019.
Very well, thank you. So everyone is aware that all the timings have changed tremendously. My children go to Nottingham and J. Clark, and my son Adam from first year in J. Clark, he comes home at around noon. And I know you said it's from grades 1 to 5, but I've seen the crossing guards crossing our seniors, crossing our children, even the high school ones, and with the traffic non-calmness that's happening in Ward 2, I really am not comfortable with pulling our crossing guards because I'm considering my seniors, the children, pregnant women, pregnant mothers. I think we do need that. And as Councillor Lee said, I need some more input from the IMO as well. And the other part, like, Mr. Meredith, can you tell me, like, is there a special age group that does cross? I am totally ignorant of this. Is there a certain age group that does the crossing guard's job? Or is it any age that does it? Because from my experience, mostly our seniors are in this category. Do you have any idea? Can you enlighten me on that?
Yeah, well, I guess the profile of our crossing guards, their ages vary. There are a number that I guess would be considered older, but I can't confirm their ages, to be honest. But there are a variety of demographic groups that are crossing guards.
Thank you. I was trying to make a point, and it's that in these very challenging times, we're looking to pull jobs from our residents and our seniors. I understand $135,000 is money, but when I see the millions we spend on other things for roads and recreation purposes and all other things, the safety of our residents is our priority. And I am very uncomfortable moving forward with this. And I echo my colleagues. I would want to hold off on this before a proper decision and studies are made. Those are my comments. And thank you, Mr. Meredith, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I would just add are there any other questions? Or I'll just add my comments, which echo all of my colleagues who I was able to hear before, while I was on the meeting. Yes, I think this does need more further study and investigation and discussion for sure, public consultation with the boards, consultation with our residents before we make any decision like that. So I saw two hands up. I saw Regional Councillor Lee's first and Mayor Collier second. So go ahead.
I just wanted to move a referral, if that is in order, through the clerk.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion forward that says, say it again, please, Councillor Lee.
I just want to refer this back to staff with the instruction that when they come back to this, I think I have to say by October, by the October GDC meeting, if we can get more information regarding more information regarding schools that are encouraging kids to go home and the number of the rough traffic per crossing guard. Again, ultimately, it's just an ask for more information. I think the broader ask would also be for our communications team to include this in our IMO, because I think this is a great way to get public feedback. And the bottom line, sorry, I can't speak on this, correct, if I refer it? Through the chair, actually, no.
It hasn't been ratified yet.
Yes. So I just think with your allowance, I think this is a great opportunity to just engage people and just get real feedback from real parents. Like Councillor Khan, for example, used a real example where his kids use the crossing guards. Great, that's a real life example. I'm sure there are some neighborhoods that have crossing guards that don't need them, and we can eliminate them. And I think, yes, 100 and some odd thousand would be the goal, but even if we eliminate 20,000, that's still savings to the taxpayer, which we all agree is good without compromising the safety of our residents. So I move to refer this back to staff so more information can be gleaned.
Thank you. And Mayor Collier, you had your hand up. I think you were going to second that.
If you need a second, I'll second it. I just want, since we're allowed to speak to it, I'll speak to it quickly. I don't think anybody is ever suggesting that we don't need crossing guards and and that safety is not paramount. I think a couple of things are, one, who should pay for it, and two, how much of that needs to be in place. So we need to be able to justify the cost, not have them there just because. But I agree, we need to get the data and we need to know how many kids are actually using this. And if we are at a site and nobody comes across or one kid comes across, we have to look at that and have that information. So I'm glad to support the referral motion because yeah, that is needed for this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Regional Councillor Crawford, you had comments on this motion?
Yes, I just have a concern about the short timeline. October, we won't even have everybody in school by October. So I'm thinking it needs to be, and also by the end of December, the government is saying, if you've chosen online classes, but it's not working for you, you have a chance to come back in January. I honestly think that we need to extend the time much like past, I would say almost February, because I really don't think that anybody has it's certainly not by October, have any kind of idea if what the numbers are going to look like. So to the motion, I would suggest that we move the date out further so that it's a better reflection of the numbers.
So Chair, if I could modify that as a friendly amendment with the seconder's approval, if we can get this for budget time, I think that's be an appropriate time to present this back to council when we talk about operating budget. So assuming staff feels they can get that done by that time.
And Mayor, you're fine to second that still?
I just have a question to that amendment. So the director of operations has said they can have this information back to us in October. I don't know how long the IMO would take. So through you, Chair, to the clerk, Mr. Harris, are you able to tell us how long that would take to get up on IMO and get some feedback? I mean, on Monday last week, we had a CAP meeting and we were making decisions based on 31 responses from an IMO session. So I don't know how relevant it is. I mean, I don't think 31 responses out of 128,000 is enough of a sampling to give us any usable data. Of course, if we got 10,000 on this one, that would be great. But I don't want to defer this process for, budget time for this is in February. We need to be making staffing decisions before February. So how long would it be to take that? How long would it take to get that IMO information, please, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Madam Chair, I may defer this to Mr. Meredith. The length of time that a project could be on IMO would be up to the project managers for that.
Yeah, we would have a campaign that we'd work with corporate communications in terms of reaching out and engaging the community at large. I think I know what the feedback, if we go out to the community through IMO, is going to be with respect to crossing guards and the program, but I think it's something that we would look to coordinate. It's generally up for a couple of weeks in terms of gaining feedback. So that's something that, October would be aggressive in terms of being able to have a campaign and have a report back to GGC. I don't know that it would be doable within the October timeframe. Well, I'm pretty certain that it would not be. So we'd be definitely looking into the November, December timeframe.
Okay, but just my understanding is the amendment is to defer this to budget, which is February.
Yes, that's correct.
As far as hiring, that would mean we would have to have our full contingent out from now till February. Personally, I would not be at all surprised to see us go back to a phase 2 in the not too distant future. We're back over 300 cases again today. I think this is going to change quite a bit over the next couple of months. And by February, we might be looking at something completely different again. So I'm just having trouble understanding the need to defer it almost 6 months when we could have the information. If October is too tight, would the mover consider November?
Absolutely. I mean, I just want it deferred. Time is less of a concern for me, but just Regional Councillor Crawford had brought up issues regarding December with the government. I'm okay with, let's say, November if Regional Councillor Crawford thinks she can support that.
Yeah, I think that the reality is that what we want is not necessarily public information. We already know what the public wants. The public is not going to be in favor of cutting out any crossing guards. There was over 31 responses on the Facebook page, for heaven's sakes. We're not, we don't, we can go out to the public. We know that's going to be the answer. The problem is if you really want the good facts, if you want to understand how many kids are in school, going home at lunchtime, then you have to almost let it run its course, because you don't know what's going to happen after December. Do you get 18% of the kids that are no longer in school right now because they're online learning come back? And does that make a difference? I don't know what that is. I think the one thing we do know is what the results of the IMO is going to be. That is a no-brainer. So whether you leave that up for 1 month, 2 months, whatever, we know what that's going to be. That if you really want to know the numbers as far as school go, then you got to let this run its course.
Just potentially, just in response to that quickly, I agree, but that's what IMO outcome would be. I can guess what it would be, but that's because I don't think we're giving enough information. If you only give the information we have now without the facts, of course, we can kind of suppose what the outcome will be. Perhaps we could get the data, which Mr. Meredith said we should be able to get between September, October. And then once we've got that data, go out through IMO for the next month to get that information before the report back in November. And that way we're giving the residents all of the information to make their decision. That would be my suggestion.
So I'm okay with that. So I mean, whether support or not, it's up to council. But yeah, I would ultimately agree with that. So let's say my motion would be to defer to the November GGC meeting.
And I think we've given direction to staff. I'm fine with that, Chair.
Oh, did she leave again?
Back on?
Yeah, I think Councillor
Did we
Tyler
lose
Moore
Lisa?
is back for now.
Okay. All right, so we're back. Are there any other questions? I have a question, but now that I'm chair, a comment question. Is there anyone else that would like to speak right now before we? Okay, there being none.
Yes, Councillor Dies.
Sorry, I've got to fix my screen because that's twice I've done that. I apologize. So
That's okay.
again, as the chairs, we're always trying to make sure we're being fair, but if you could maybe say it verbally as well as the hand motion. So Regional
back,
Council.
Rob.
Okay, go ahead. Regional Councillor Dies is up.
Thank you. So I support the motion, although I don't think there's a real rush with this because it's such a fluid issue. In other words, Regional Councillor Crawford is absolutely right, and that kids have the option to come back in January if they've stayed home or they're doing online learning. We don't know how that's going to work because remember, parents are also doing that at home. They're working at home at the same time. So we don't know how that's going to work. We're also expecting a second wave. We don't know when, we don't know how that's going to work. We see the numbers going up. So there's all kinds of scenarios. Maybe we're a little bit too early in the game with COVID to make this type of decision. But I really do believe we need to get more information with the school board support. The other issue I wanted to address was the issue of the cost. I mean, it is what it is. However, we're going to be looking at an automated speed enforcement program. And the reason we have to have crossing guards is because people don't drive safely. They don't take responsibility. And this enforcement program is a huge costly program to try and get people to slow down. So maybe we can access some money to help offset these costs that we have to do at the municipal level. Just a thought, maybe we can't do it. But I do support your motion and I appreciate everybody's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Regional Councillor Dies. Now, Councillor Khan, you had your hand up earlier. Did you have a chance while I was out to make your questions or comments? You did? Okay.
Good.
So, yes, Councillor.
I haven't spoken. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
My original ask was that the 57 locations, sorry, it wasn't my original ask, but it grew to 57 locations. So with this deferral, are we going to be putting the lunchtime program back in place, A? And B, everybody's comments are the same. If you think about it, we need flexibility on this. we can't say, you know, and I don't know really why it has to be so scientific. So moving forward, you know, we might end up with 31 locations being staffed. Anyway, my ask is, can staff confirm that the 57 locations will be put back in?
If council supports the decision to defer, then we'll be having the conversations with our crossing guards immediately to reinstate the lunchtime coverage.
As part of the defer, so keep it as it is. You guys go back to the
Correct.
books. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, is that everybody's comments and questions? And I'm sorry, could we now have that motion read aloud? Is it written down somewhere? Or what is the motion that we're voting on, please?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I have something written up if you'll indulge us.
Thank you.
This is a motion to refer with direction moved by Regional Councillor Lee that the Crossing Guard Program lunchtime coverage report be referred back to staff with direction to undertake public consultation and data collection before reporting back to the General Government Committee in November of 2020.
Okay, that's the motion. Any questions or comments? I think we've made them all. Do we need a seconder or no?
Madam Chair, a seconder is not required at GGC.
Okay, thank you. So it's moved by Councillor Lee. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hands. Okay, the motion passed. Any opposed? I didn't see everybody. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so moving into presentations. We've had presentation 6.1 already. So let's ask for Director Romanowski and Supervisor Grieve for the presentation 6.2 Automated Speed Enforcement Program. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'll turn it over to John to walk us through the ASE presentation.
Thank you, Jeff. Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members of council. So today I'm going to talk to you about the proposed automated speed enforcement program for the town of Ajax. So to give you a bit of background on my presentation today, first of all, I'll go over a bit of background overall related to the program. I'm then going to highlight the proposed automated speed enforcement program for the town of Ajax, going over site selection and scheduling, proposed hours of operation, highlighting the required agreements, and then going over some information related to program implementation. I will then go over high-level financial implications of the project, and then some conclusions. So for background, in February of this year, staff outlined the establishment of 10 new community safety zones and provided a high-level overview of the general operation of ASE. At that February meeting, council approved the 10 new community safety zones and directed staff to report back with an outline of a proposed program. At the June 15th council meeting, we received an additional motion that directed staff that when they presented the proposed program, that the cost should include the implementation of implementation of 3 portable units. So outlining what the ASE program is. So as a reminder, automated speed enforcement can be implemented in community safety zones and school safety zones. Right now, the staff are in the process of finalizing the 10 new community safety zones. We're sending out the award for the sign installation this week. Once those are deployed, along with the 2 existing community safety zones, we will have 12 locations in town where an ASE program could be deployed should we move forward. Those 12 locations are fairly evenly split between the 3 wards. 3 of them are located in Ward 1, 5 of them in Ward 2, and 4 of them in Ward 3. And with regards to the schedule, we are proposing that the 3 mobile cameras be rotated approximately every 3 months through these 12 locations. With this schedule, that would allow a location to see a camera in the first year of the program. Or would allow all locations to see a camera within the first year of the program. So as a reminder, these are our 12 community safety zones, the 2 existing, as well as the 10, which we are in the process of adding the signage to. At the moment, the town does not have any school safety zones identified in our traffic bylaw. And the criteria for establishing these zones was outlined in that February 2020 report, so that in the future, if there are other or additional road segments that need to be reviewed, we have a set criteria that we can evaluate that segment with and determine if it is suggested or eligible for being identified as a community safety zone. So a second vital component of establishing an automated speed enforcement program is determining the appropriate hours of operation. When determining the appropriate hours, we want to ensure that we consider road characteristics and the surrounding land uses, but we also have to be cognizant of potential offense volumes. We want to ensure, so all ASE enforcement in Ontario is processed through provincial offenses notice and therefore requires significant court resources. So we want to ensure that the total volume of offenses that is generated by a program does not overwhelm the courts. As you all know, Durham Region recently initiated their automated speed enforcement program, and they have, at their locations, they have selected hours of operation to ensure that they do not overwhelm the courts. Staff are recommending for the town of Ajax that we initiate initially a 6 hour a day program where our cameras are operational for 6 hours a day. Prior to the implementation of this program, it is suggested and required that the town contact Durham Regional Courts to ensure that they have the capacity to handle the estimated number of tickets from the town's program. And similarly to other participating municipalities in automated speed enforcement, we recommend, or staff are recommending, that town council submit the request to the province that automated speed enforcement penalties be permitted to be used or issued under the administrative penalty system. At the moment, they are not permitted under the administrative penalty system, but should they be allowed to be moved over to this system, it would relieve significant pressures on the courts and allow for municipalities to reduce costs of the programs. Oh, sorry. So program implementation. So to operate, so right now, staff are seeking endorsement of the proposed program as outlined today. With council's endorsement, staff will begin to prepare the required agreements and finalize the remaining programs. By approving the ASE program now, it can commence in January of 2021, provided that all agreements have been executed and the equipment has been deployed. And prior to beginning the program or beginning operation of the program, staff will report back to council with all the final details of the program. So just as a reminder, the 3 agreements that are required to operate the program, they were outlined in February, but I'll restate them now. There's an agreement with the equipment provider that is required to be signed. There's the second agreement is with the Ministry of Transportation to access their vehicle license plate database. And the third agreement is with the City of Toronto, who is operating the Joint Processing Center for all participating municipalities of the ASE program in Ontario. So financial implications. There are many costs associated with operating an ASE program. These include equipment costs, the MTO database access fee, Joint Processing Center costs, municipal court costs, other miscellaneous costs, as well as general program administration costs, which are mostly staff time. As this is a brand new program for all participating municipalities in Ontario, the program costs are very difficult to estimate. We have done a high-level estimation, which I'll present today, but I would like to reiterate that all cost estimates are subject to confirmation and can be refined as actual costs are verified. So today we've prepared a high-level cost related to the annual operation of the program. This is related to operating 3 mobile units for 6 hours each day. We estimate operating costs to be in the neighborhood of 1.3 million. This is based on an assumption that through 6 hours of operation on the 12 existing or 12 community safety zones, we would be issuing approximately 15,000 tickets annually. Obviously, should the hours of operation change or the speed profiles within those 12 community safety zones change, this will have a direct impact on the number of tickets issued and therefore a direct impact on the operating costs. Related to fine generation or revenue generation, I should say, related to the program, fines for speeding are prescribed in the Highway Traffic Act in section 128, subsection 14. They specify specific thresholds or fine related to specific thresholds of speeding. Within a community safety zone, those fines are doubled. And again, related to revenue, as revenue is generated directly related to the speed of the violators, it is very difficult to estimate the exact revenue that would be generated from this program. Based on the speed characteristics of the roads, from data we currently have, staff are estimating that the revenue generated from this program would be in the range of $1 million to 1.2 million annually. If these estimates are accurate, that would represent that this program would have a net cost on the municipality of between $150,000 and $300,000. And thanks to some help from finance, just to put that in context, represents a potential impact on the town's tax rate of 0.25 to 0.5% in 2021. So here's a little bit more detail on how we got to those financial implications. I would like to reiterate that these are preliminary at this point. They are consistent with the numbers that were used by Durham Region when they estimated costs associated with their program. And I would also like to reiterate that these calculations have been made with a number of significant assumptions built in. However, again, they are consistent with the approach that was taken by Durham Region. So for a mobile speed camera, the daily rate is approximately $85 a day, whether that camera is in operation or not. Through the agreement that is signed with the equipment provider, it is a multi-year agreement, multi-year commitment to use of that speed camera. Related to the access fee for MTO, that is on a per ticket basis of approximately $1 per ticket. Joint processing center fees are estimated at approximately $20 per ticket, but again, subject to validation given that municipalities are just beginning operation of revenue services within their ASE programs. Court processing fees is where I would say the greatest assumption has been made. Again, given that it is a brand new program, it's hard to estimate what the court cost would be for that ticket, as well as what is the challenge rate related to individuals who receive tickets, whether they simply pay their fines or if they take their fines to court for processing. Again, in consultation with the region, it was assumed instead of trying to estimate that percentage that is challenged in court, they applied a simple cost per ticket, realizing that some would have a cost and some would not, or the cost for one would be significantly higher than another. We put an assumption there and have estimated the cost at $65 a ticket. The miscellaneous costs are related to moving the mobile cameras. There's a small cost paid to the operator of the cameras to move them between our zones, which brings us to our estimated costs of 1.3 million, with estimated revenues of 1 to 1.2 million, and the potential net costs as outlined there. So in conclusion, I just want to reiterate that ASC programs have been proven very successful in many other jurisdictions around the world as an innovative way of reducing operating speeds and improving road safety. And I would emphasize that element of road safety. An automated speed enforcement program is a road safety program. It is not a revenue generating program, or is not intended to be a revenue generating program. Its basis is in road safety, and that is what these programs have shown to be successful at improving, is road safety. The development of an ASC program is identified in the town's strategic plan, and it is reflective that this council is committed to promoting safer streets through new and innovative approaches. And the development or operation of an ASC program in the town of Ajax would further establish the town's support of the overall Vision Zero initiative. So thank you for listening to my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much for that, John. Okay, so the first person I have down for questions is Councillor Tyler Morin. Go ahead, please, Rob.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for another long study from you, John. You do the deep dives on so many things for our town. Thank you for your efforts. And I'm really glad that you kind of got to my question and my comment about road safety. That's what this is about. A lot of times I'll hear residents, friends of mine, and that saying that's some kind of cash grab, how it's some sort of revenue generating, another way of us making money. And you can see, if you take just a quick look, that it's very challenging. It's a lot of money to put this out. It's basically $100,000 a camera, if you think about it that way. And then we're counting on people breaking the law. So hopefully they don't, but then if they don't, the revenues are going to be increasingly smaller, which maybe that means we won't need them eventually. But right now it's exciting. I am asking that communications, when this comes out, when this all comes to fruition, I really think we need to get that message out, that this is, I mean, it probably sounds rhetorical, but you know, that it is a road safety concern. It's Vision Zero, which Regional Councillor Crawford works on. It's all about that. It's all about road safety. The other questions we get asked is, you know, the thresholds of when do I get a ticket, which is silly. You shouldn't be speeding, or you just stay below the speed limit, you'll be fine. The other thing residents ask is, will it affect my insurance company? What I've been told by staff is that they should go to their insurance companies and ask them that. And obviously it goes to the vehicle, not the driver, because they don't know who's driving the vehicle. But my comment and question was to communications to ensure that we would be letting everyone know it's road safety and somehow word it so they know it's not a cash grab. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler Morin. Mayor Collier, you were next to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Mr. Grieve, and thank you for your presentation, John. One of the things you said was we haven't signed and we haven't created any school zones. We've only created community safety zones. But just to clarify, when we first looked at this over a year ago, we basically made all school zones community safety zones. Is that accurate?
Through the chair to Mayor Collier.
Around all schools community safety zones. So basically we made, instead of creating school zones, we did the same thing by just making them community safety zones.
Through the chair to Mayor Collier, we didn't, not every single school. is designated a community safety zone, but if you look at the criteria to establish a community safety zone, we do give a specific reference to its proximity to schools, and you would see a lot of the new locations are in close proximity to our schools. Absolutely.
So we effectively covered pretty much all schools in Ajax with our community safety zones.
Well, not all schools. There are
most schools.
Most, yes. Where there is a cluster of our schools on road segments, that those are the ones that have been identified, and obviously have other characteristics that show road safety is something that we want to ensure.
Right. Okay. I want to get to the whole, we're spending $93,000 a year for 3 cameras, and that's $85 a day times 365 times 3. Yet you're suggesting that we only operate these cameras for 6 hours each per day. And the reason being given is so we don't overwhelm the courts. I personally couldn't care less about the courts. This is about community safety. I don't think a DRPS officer sits there when they're writing a ticket thinking, gee, I wonder if the courts have the capability of handling all these tickets I'm writing. If we're going to do this, and this is about community safety, to me, it's about community safety 24 hours a day, not just the, 6 hours during school time, for instance. Is there any other reason for us to limit the number of hours per day other than just concerns over court capacity?
Through the chair to Mayor Collier, no, not at this time. As I said, because this is a brand new system or a brand new program, all participating municipalities have taken that same approach. City of Toronto has limited the hours of operation. Durham Region, City of Ottawa. It's because if under the
when you're talking about Toronto, I mean, we're going to have 3. Toronto has how many?
You're, through the chair to Mayor Collier, you are correct. If we were to operate 24 hours a day, 3 cameras, we would have annual ticket numbers north of 60,000. Which
that's upfront. I expect that would drop quickly over time. But if we only operate it for 6 hours a day, my thinking process until somebody changes it with facts is, we're not catching all the people, so therefore we won't drive down the numbers as quickly as we could if we did catch all the people.
Through the chair, I agree with your premise that for road safety, the ideal operation is 24 hours a day. As I said, we're taking the approach to limit the hours to ensure the smooth operation of the program and the viability of the program in the long term. If tickets are issued and residents or individuals who receive the tickets realize that if they challenge it in court, they will never see their court in day and therefore have their
good statement to make on a public meeting. We don't want to tell people the loopholes right now. I know the loopholes, but I mean, I still think the message is sent. Even if somebody gets a ticket, whether that ticket actually comes through to fruition and they pay the fine or not, it's still a deterrent, I would suggest.
I agree, and I would suggest so the hours of operation are not something that would be publicly disclosed. So our residents are not going to be made aware of when the camera is on or when the camera is off. So there is a further deterrent there that the camera is deployed, and we have the ability to manage the schedule so that it remains random in nature and therefore is more effective as a road safety initiative.
Okay. But if we approve this today, we're not actually approving those hours of operation today. That's just the recommendations through the presentation, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'll work out the hours of operation later. I think we're also making an assumption of how many would choose to fight it regarding the courts. And I don't think a lot of people would fight it unless they just, it's a hassle. Most people, these tickets aren't that much. They're just going to pay them. And I hope they will learn their lesson. I want to talk about the locations because in the report, it says that additional, once a program receives approval and all agreements are signed, staff will work with Redflex to finalize the location. I think that should say staff will work with council to finalize the locations because nobody knows the locations needed more than we do because we're the ones that get the calls. Is there any issue with that being amended to say that, you know, council, each individual local and regional councillor in each ward will be consulted as to the location in their ward prior to installation?
So through the chair to Mayor Collier, the reference of that location is meant to be within the 12 zones where we are permitted to deploy the cameras. It is simply the location of the camera within that zone. There are certain technical requirements. So we are identifying a location within the 12 community safety zones, and it's just technically where are they placed within that zone? That's the work that is being undertaken with Redflex.
That makes more sense. Thank you for clarifying that. But prior to the actual which of the 12 zones are going to get them, we will have input to that.
Through the chair to Mayor Collier, I think Mr. Grieve said that within the first year of the program, each of the community safety zones would entertain the cameras. So every community safety zone will have the camera in it within that first year of operation.
Okay. I have a question regarding the signage. And I'm wondering why we're not signing all the 12 locations now with the 90 days notice. I don't know why we wouldn't just go ahead and do that. Give the notice, this is in use in Ajax, not we're going to sign 3 locations and then we're going to have to do a 90-day notice at 3 more locations. Am I understanding that correctly, Mr. Grieve?
So through the chair to Mayor Collier, should we approve this automated speed enforcement program this year? I would agree that part of the preparation is putting up all of the speed enforcement signage. Prior to having a program, it would be inappropriate to use that signage. But if we move forward with, because it is signage associated with a specific program. If the town does not intend on operating automated speed enforcement, I would argue you are misleading your residents and drivers of the road that automated speed enforcement is in effect or potentially in effect if it never is intended to be on that road.
Hold on. We have 12 community safety zones, and the director of planning has just said that each one is going to have a location next year, is going to have presence next year. So we do intend on doing it in all zones.
Through the chair, I do agree with you, Mayor Collier, that if we intend to operate automated speed enforcement in 2021, that yes, we should deploy the signage related to automated speed enforcement. That signage should not have been deployed until we had this meeting to have council direction that program is proceeding.
I guess what I want to make sure that we, this process has been a long process. And now it's going to be pushed till next year, and that's fine. It takes what it takes. But what I don't want is to be restricted with a 90-day notice period ever going forward. We're doing this system. The system will be active all over Ajax at one time or another. And I personally don't have an issue with having that broad statement because we can say automatic speed enforcement in use because it is. It will be in 3 locations somewhere around the town. Personally, I mean, we have to follow the rules, but the police don't give notice that they're going to be out doing tickets here or there. They just show up and they do try and hide, which is proper thing. So I don't know why we have to be bound to do things differently. That's not really a question. It's more of a statement.
Yeah,
but I would just argue that giving the 90 days notice that speed enforcement is coming, I would I think we should do that around town at all locations, because right now, I don't know what the actual locations are going to be. And right now, I think it could be at any of those 12 locations.
Through the chair to Mayor Collier, you are correct. It could be at any of the 12 locations. And we will have the automated speed enforcement coming soon, signage deployed, should we get direction to proceed today. We will not be bound or held up by the 90-day warning period. I would remind council, though, that 90-day warning period is a legislative requirement from the ministry. We are required to state 90 days prior to the deployment of a camera on a location that the camera is coming. Once a camera is deployed on a given road segment, the sign changes from coming soon to in use. So there are requirements as outlined in our agreement with the ministry on how we deploy our signs. But if we are proceeding with installing or initiating the program in 2021, we can deploy the coming soon signage at all 12 locations following that direction from council today.
Okay, so it's 90 days minimum, but we could do 365 days advance notice.
That is correct.
Perfect. All right, I just want to, one last question. How much did we spend on traffic calming last year, and how much do we have budgeted for traffic calming, this year, and how much do we have budgeted for traffic calming next year, approximately?
Through the chair to Mayor Collier, our traffic calming budget is $100,000 annually.
Okay. So we've had the, thank you, Mr. Grieve, and I don't want to put down any work that you do, but we know that some of the traffic calming that we put into place is not as effective as others. So, and that's no fault of staff. That's just the fact that, you know, some are more effective than others. We just in our last discussion about crossing guards, we're talking about a potential $154,000, I think what the number was, savings, and the argument was made that it's not about money, it's about safety. And I would echo that in this case. This is not about money, this is about community safety. And we've tried spending $100,000 a year for the past many years, whether we spent all of it or not, whatever, but trying to slow people down. And some of those have been effective and some of those have not. But this cost to me, being an estimated between 150 and 300,000, I think the number was, when it comes to safety, is a small price to pay. And again, I think we're erring on the high side. I would hope that we're erring on the high side with our estimates. So once we start this, I believe it's a 5-year lease, Mr. Grieve, on the cameras?
Through the chair to Mayor Collier, that is correct.
Okay. So we're committing to this for 5 years. And even if it was worst case scenario and it was $300,000 a year, I mean, over 5 years is not a big number when you're talking about a $78 million budget. It's 4%. But this gives us another tool, and I think a very strong tool. My only comments, as I said, where I don't think we should be limiting the operation, or if we do, I think it should be quite a bit more than 6 hours, because we're not only paying for 6 hours, we're paying for 24 hours lease per machine. And I think we should use that. I think the costs will be covered by the fines. I don't think a lot of people are going to challenge these through the courts. Time will tell. And later on, if we find that we are having concerns, I don't think, and I haven't heard that there's anything stopping us from reducing hours later. Is that accurate, Mr. Grieve?
Through the chair to Mayor Collier, that is correct.
Okay. So, but I also suspect that if we are very aggressive at the beginning, I think we'll catch a lot of people, and I think that will send a very strong warning and have a good effect on what we're trying to do. So those are my comments. I thank you for the questions. I will absolutely support the recommendation. If you need a mover, I'm glad to move it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Regional Councillor Crawford, you had some questions.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, John, for your report. Uh, my question is, when we when we get the cameras, if this is approved today, is there a possibility of having them set out for a certain time frame where all you're doing is collecting data? So, for instance, during COVID, the processing center was closed down, so the region was actually still collecting data through having the cameras on, but no tickets were being issued. So, therefore, we know for a fact that on Bailey, there were 65,000 cars that went through there in a period of time that were over the speed limit, and they could pinpoint the time frame. So if in fact the idea is we're only going to be using them for a certain time frame, if by collecting data, let's say for a month, at least then we can be specific on when we are going to put the signage or when we're going to turn the cameras on, because we'll already know when the speeding times are. Is that a possibility to do that?
Through the chair to Regional Councillor Crawford, with the automated speed enforcement cameras, I would have to confirm if we can deploy them roadside before turning them on. I know the region did so, but obviously was due to COVID restrictions. I would say to your statement, we could do our own data collection where we get speed profile data of all these 12 locations and can look at that in detail to determine when offenders are most prevalent or most common, and could tailor our schedule to that or to be reflective of that if we so chose something that's less than 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I think that's really important because you can, if you're only going to do 6 hours and you throw them out there when no one's speeding, like you might as well do it at the most effective times. So either or, whether it's through the camera or whether it's through your monitoring these streets, I think that's really good, valuable information and could be helping us strategically have the cameras out there. I know that I just sent a text or an email to Stephen. Our cameras went live on September the 8th, and they're going through the process this week of actually mailing out the tickets. So we'll know how many tickets were issued in that location roughly by about the middle of this month, I think, is when they're aiming to have it. So it'll be very interesting to see how that all pans out. I mean, ideally, you are going to make money, or you're going to break even, let's say, because people will be ticketed, but then hopefully you're changing behavior, because that's what this is all about. It's not about a cash grab. It is about changing people's behavior. And if you really want to boost your numbers, put one on Ravenscroft. I'll get your numbers up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Regional Councillor Crawford. Are there any other questions or comments at this time? And just looking on my phone, I don't see any hands raised. Okay, great. Thank you. All of my questions have been answered, so I also don't need to ask anymore. And the mayor has moved the report, so the recommendations of this report be approved for automated speed enforcement program. So all in favor? Aye. Great. Any opposed? I don't see any. Thank you. The motion passes. Thank you. So that's the end of the open session agenda. We need a motion now to move into closed. I see Councillor Khan. All in favor? Okay, great. So let's do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are live again.
Thank you very much. So we're back in the open session. So could I please have a mover for a motion to ratify the proceedings of the closed session? And I see again, Councillor Khan. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. And we are at the very bottom, section 8 of our agenda, the adjournment.
We adjourn.
I see Mayor Collier moving to adjourn. All in favor? None opposed. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.